Okay, thank you, Ms. Offi, for the introduction. Thank you for your technical support and for your willingness to help us out with our today's upcoming next seminar, webinar on financial and banking and economic issues. And first of all, I'd like to thank our two hosts, Stefan Berger, MEP, and Andrzej Kowaczyk, MEP as well, for hosting this event and thus triggering debates that take place and are of particular importance in the discussion that we're having in the Econ Committee at this time. So thank you, Stefan Berger, for being here and for hosting this event. And we'll listen to the two MEPs later on. I'd also like to say hello to our today's panelists. We'll have a keynote speech by Helen Koopman from the European Commission, and later on for the debate, Maria Staszkiewicz, Kevin Heckel, Karl Jensfeld, and Edward Bowles, as pointed out in the invitation, will follow up on the keynote with a debate. We will close roughly, if I'm not mistaken, by 5:15, if that's correct. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Helen Koopman from the European Commission. Today's topic is MiCA, Unlocking a Safe and Prosperous European Digital Assets and Payments Market, which is an ongoing discussion, ongoing legislative project that we're dealing with in the Econ Committee at this time. Now, Ms. Koopman asked us to specify the title of her intervention, and the title will be precisely "How can we promote European leadership in blockchain, cooperation industry, building the ecosystem, create global standards for these upcoming technologies, and with this create opportunities for European startups and SMEs to compete." Mrs. Koopman is the head of unit of the Digital Innovation and Blockchain, the Digital Single Market, DG Connect of the European Commission. Mrs. Koopman, the floor is yours, and we'll be listening attentively.
Thank you so much, Stefan, and thank you for the host, Stefan Berger, Andrzej Kowaczyk, for inviting me here today with this great panel and I'm looking forward very much to the debate after my short keynote. I will do a short presentation and then to kick off the debate for all of us. And of course, focusing, as Stefan said, a bit more on the ecosystem and the innovation angle of blockchain and what we're trying to build there in the European Commission. For that, I will share my screen. So I will just step you through a few of the policy actions that the European Commission are undertaking together with yourself, the Parliament, as well as the EU member states. So first of all, we have joined up on a political vision on a European blockchain partnership, rolling out the European blockchain services infrastructure. But we're also connecting expertise, building the ecosystem, and we do that together with experts all over the world through the EU Blockchain Observatory Forum, which is in fact a joint project of the European Parliament and the European Commission. Then we're also building public-private partnership with the industry, large and small, through the International Association of Trusted Blockchain Applications. So I also walk you through these acronyms while I speak. And then we're investing in EU research, innovation, deployment, startups, and skills. And last but not least, which is the topic of this session, is promoting and enabling a legal framework for our industry, small and big, and also public services. So first, as I mentioned, we have a joint political vision with the European Blockchain Partnership, which includes all member states and Norway and Liechtenstein also, which has formed this partnership to roll out a European blockchain services infrastructure for cross-border services of public interest. And this Partnerships is involving both governmental and technical experts in the different services that the infrastructure is supporting. And here a few of the examples that the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure is working on as use cases. We have one on notarization of documents for auditing purposes. We are developing an EU self-sovereign identity framework. On top of that framework, we're also looking at how you can exchange credentials, for example, for education purposes, if you want to work or study abroad in another EU country. Then we have trusted data sharing between public authorities on top of this infrastructure as well. And those are the four first wave of use cases we're now developing, and we are in a very close to production mode of all of those four. And then we're already looking at another wave of use cases, looking at SME financing, the use of social security number on top of this infrastructure, as well as investigating asylum demand management. So then we also said, as I said, are working with the industry, both small and large players in this International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications, which is abbreviated INATBA. It started about 2 years ago that industry came together and felt that they needed to federate themselves to look at how blockchain could be deployed globally, and then doing it from a European perspective to start with. But indeed, this association is truly global. Now with 160 company members, and besides it, there's a governmental advisory forum for regulatory dialogue between industry and regulators from different countries. The association has now divided themselves into different working groups to discuss different issues in vertical areas such as energy, finance, healthcare, identity, mobility, supply chain, etc. Very active working groups there. And to further on our policy agenda, we have set up a EU Blockchain Observatory Forum. This is a European Parliament project proposed by the European Parliament that we are implementing. And it's a very good think tank for everyone interested in the blockchain space. So the observatory is engaging with experts, both academic and industry and policymakers, to produce reports and to organize workshops in areas of interest. And the latest thematic report is on energy efficiency on blockchain, which has recently triggered, of course, a lot of discussions about the sustainability of blockchain. And the report is developing that topic. And we have other reports coming in very topical areas such as non-fungible tokens, blockchain in the healthcare sector, blockchain energy sector. We also have had reports on the ecosystem in Europe. So that's a very important and interesting wealth of information that people can look into and draw upon. It's free of charge and open to everyone. Then from the innovation side, we have a quite important investment in both research and innovation, as well as deployment of blockchain. We have cutting-edge blockchain research on the Horizon Europe right now, looking into more sustainable, more scalable blockchain applications. We're also trying to use innovation procurement under the digital program, which was just adopted, which is the first of its kind deployment program for digital technologies. And here, the whole European blockchain services infrastructure is supported to focus really on championing our EU companies to deploy blockchain technology on EPSI. We are trying also to leverage next generation EU for multi-country projects. So the recovery and resilience plans that the EU countries have put in place, some of them have dedicated funding to deploy blockchain technology, and also in cooperation with the blockchain services infrastructure. So this is leveraging larger funding that we also have in the EU. So the funding of the member states. Then together with under InvestEU, I should say, and together with EIB and EIF, we have put up a scheme, a fund-of-funds scheme for investment in scaling startups for artificial intelligence and blockchain. And this fund has actually now had through its pilot phase and has had a tremendous success in the fact that it has leveraged almost more than 10 times the initial cornerstone investment that the EU put in here of about 100 million. So now about 1.3 billion is ready to be invested in startups in this space in the market. Then we are looking also at flanking measures on making Europe more attractive for startups to grow in. And here we have a initiative called Startup Nation Standard, together with the member states, to look at how to attract skills, how to make it easier to, for example, have third country nationals, high school nationals, to be able to fund people that are interested in this space in stock, be able to give them packages or stock options when they get engaged, and other measures that are really important. Not only the funding is important, it's also important with these flanking measures. And last but not least, in this space, we have an important program on development of skills. We know that there's an important skills gap in digital technologies in general, but particularly with blockchain, there is an enormous gap of highly skilled blockchain developers, for instance. We have a project right now looking at this gap in detail, and then under the digital program, there is more work on putting in place curricula for universities to focus on blockchain, for example, and also in terms of crash courses for individuals and companies that need to step up their skills in blockchain. And then to the topic of the day, promoting an enabling framework. Of course, MiCA, all the experts on MiCA are here as panelists, and probably we will debate that more in detail. But we're also looking at other enabling frameworks, such as the European Digital Identity, which was launched in June, which is putting in place a digital identity framework with digital wallets that will be important, and an important development for this the blockchain services, which often are using digital wallets, and many of the applications are building on a trusted digital identity. And then we also have some work on the Data Act right now, looking at following the Data Governance Act, how data can be pooled, and also in this context, how smart contracts can be used in the organization of data pools. So those are just a few pointers to different things that we look at right now. And I think that finishes my keynote, and I hope we can have an interesting debate, because of course blockchain is a team sport and we need everyone involved to push the agenda forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Kupman, for this brief introduction. There was a question in Medina. I would like to ask our office whether this presentation could be available to all the participants. Is that a possibility, Mrs. Kupman?
Yes, indeed. Yes, no problem. I have already provided it, so you can forward it. Great.
So we got it, and we can then forward it to our participants. Very well. I would like to, when do you have to leave? How much time do you have?
At 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Okay, so that leaves us enough time to at least continue. Or maybe if there are immediate questions, I mean, I would have some questions myself, but I'm your humble facilitator, and not the one who's going to ask questions here. If there are immediate questions, I would like you to raise them now. If that's not the case, I would like to continue with the debate and the first brief introductions by our 6 panelists. This is not the case. My colleague Stefan Berger, I would like to invite you to say hello to us and share your thoughts and insights with us.
Yes, thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you very much, Helen, for the overview of the whole plot, which is needed to develop a new reality in the whole crypto market in Europe. And so to start with this debate, I would like to give you a short overview over the state of play with MiCA. It was a big file. MiCA is quite a bulky file, and the Commission proposal was already 170 pages, a big document, to which the shadow rapporteurs tabled 1,200 amendments. And so I had a lot of work to do, and I had a lot to read. And to compare, it's going worse. The Council working paper as well as a Council mandate of last week were 400 pages each. So I have to read more and more and more. And in the beginning, my focus was, and it's still my focus, to strike a well-balanced position of the European Parliament. And in the early beginning, I was convinced that MiCA would be a rather technical file and not a political file. But in the end, it's of course a political file. We have debates, what should we do with a big player like DM? What shall we do with all my amendments? And when I saw all my colleague amendments, then of course it was obvious that this is a very strong political file. And from the beginning, we have fundamental issues to discuss. For example, let me name 3 or 4. The example liability. The question, should crypto asset service providers be liable to their clients for loss up to market value if the loss is resulting from a malfunction or hacks? Or would such a liability go too far and basically make it impossible for any European service provider to compete in this market and thus just drives the business to Asia or to the USA? The other example is the proof of stake. Some of the political groups want to prohibit this technology altogether, while others recognize in the proof of stake procedure that's one of the core technologies of crypto. So there's a big question, what shall we do with the proof of stake? My opinion, we need proof of stake because it is, of course, a core technology, but we have a strong debate about it. And there are other open questions, for example, at which stage the crypto white paper must be submitted, or how and when the energy consumption need to be assessed and taken into account or not, or in my opinion, should it be released in the white paper or whatever. So this is a political debate we have in the MiCA file, and nevertheless, I'm optimistic that we are on the right path and that we can proceed to a committee vote in January or February in 22. And so maybe this are my first remarks, and I think we have more possibilities and in the following debate.
Okay, thank you very much, Stefan, for this brief intervention. And I would like to carry on with our other MEP, Andrej Kovačič, our co-host. Andrej, are you there?
Yes, thank you for the floor, and good afternoon, everybody. Apologies for joining a little bit late, and thank you for retaking the picture. I would like to follow up very quickly to what my colleague Stefan Berger has just said, and I have to commend his work on the MiCA file, which I fully subscribe to what he said. It might have seen at the beginning as a very technical and maybe difficult debate, but we are actually having a lot of political choice to make also when we prepare the final European Parliament's position, and I'm really glad that he's taking the work here very seriously, and I believe that under his leadership we can actually end up with a position which is workable, which is a good one, which provides all the necessary principles and which reflects all the key concerns that are raised, and that actually can help into initiating into fruitful discussion also with the member states, as they already have their general approach. Maybe to complement what has just been said on some of the political choice that we need to make, I think, or at least that is also a position that our political group is putting forward. I share the view that we should not use MiCA as a type of regulation that is ruling out a specific technology or ruling out or specific business model, because I don't think this is or MiCA is the right place to do so. I think we have taken in Europe a very brave initiative in looking into the area of crypto assets and financial services provided through technologies such as DLT, to find the right way to regulate it, to find how these types of how these business models actually fit to what we already know in other parts of the financial services landscape, let's say the more traditional one, and how this can actually work together. And I think this is actually a very difficult endeavor, and we should get it right, because and it has been also mentioned earlier, there is a potential for us to set standards globally. The European ecosystem in terms of crypto assets, but also in more broader terms of digital financial services, is a very important one in globally, and I think this is something that can actually help us to be able to, if not to set standards, at least to show examples how these things can be tackled from the regulatory point of view. And I think there's a lot of interest that also not only coming from the fintech and financial services sector, but I think there's a lot of interest also coming from the consumers. I had earlier today a very good discussion on another platform where we discussed how the young generation currently assess the investment opportunities at this point, and the crypto assets actually are becoming more and more attractive, especially for young retail investors, to see how they can actually use them in terms of enlarging their investment portfolio. So I think there's many angles from which the regulation is bringing some important additions, and I think it's really up to us to get it right, not to make it too prescriptive, to keep to basic principles that we would like to achieve, also to make it, if possible, to make it future-proof, because I think we all here know how fast the crypto assets and the digital financial services landscape is evolving, and how sometimes how slow can we be at the European level in terms of delivering on the legislation. So I think we should really strive to get a piece of legislation that is principle based, that is forward looking, so that it's not actually obsolete if any other business models or new technologies are actually entering into theater. So there will be maybe very initial remarks and one quick comment to the introductory remarks of Ms. Koopman. I totally agree, and I can only agree with the statement of how important is actually this area of raising the awareness and education in new technologies such as blockchain. In the country which I know best, in the Czech Republic, we are currently try to start programs at the universities with cooperation with technical universities where these very specific types of skills that can be acquired. And then I truly support the Commission in the effort in creating competence networks of those who are actually willing to be active in this regard, because I think this is one of the area where Europe can actually have a very good competitive edge, and I think if we take it seriously from the beginning, we can actually create a brand new business sector here. So full support and also readiness to cooperate on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andre, for these comments, and we'll certainly come back to them later on. I would like to invite our Maria Staskovic, who is the chairwoman of the board of and CEO of the Czech FinTech Association, and she's also the president of the European Digital Finance Association. So please enlighten us, Mrs. Staskovic, from your side, from the association side.
Thank you for the invitation, and a very warm welcome to everyone who is online. A very short introduction on how both the European and Czech associations see MiCA, and I probably will have more comments on what has already been said. It may seem strange to some people that the business is actually and was looking forward to a regulation in crypto assets, and this was confirmed to me today during a big event actually in Brussels, where people were praising EU institutions' activities in regard to regulating crypto assets, because even though if they may not agree with all the articles, they may not like everything, sometimes they say it's better to have any rules than none, and to live live in an area that is insecure in terms of, for example, investors who do not know if they can pour funds into a project because they don't know if it wouldn't turn out, for example, criminal or against law. So the legal certainty to operate is one of the arguments, one of the reasons that the market in general is welcoming the regulation. The other one is, of course, the customer protection, which would, in the words of businesses, make crypto assets mainstream. So that's the main reason why almost everyone is looking forward to a sort of regulation, because crypto assets would become part of the mainstream and businesses would get more customers. So that's the general outline and the general feeling connected with the regulation. Of course, there are plenty of details that still will be discussed, I presume, but when we saw the draft compromise text of the parliament, we've seen nice changes there in terms of, for example, of recognizing decentralized finance in the regulation, and putting forward a definition on recognizing this decentralized autonomous organizations. So this is, I think, the first time these organizations are becoming a legal definition and are being part of a legal text. We'll see what's the compromise of what's the compromise text of the presidency. It's already been aired to some of the stakeholders. I didn't see DAOs and DEFIs specifically mentioned there, but we still have time to put forward our potential amendments there. So just to close this part on regulation, yes, we welcome it. Some details should, in our opinion, be more specific, especially DeFi, the recognition of DeFi and DAO. This should definitely remain in the final text of the regulation. But I think EU has taken a very bold move, as Mr. Kovacic has said. Couple of comments on what has already been said, and maybe a question to the Commission. One of the ways how to make the regulatory scene in the EU more flexible is the usage of sandboxes and experimental clauses. That was already, these two instruments were already have been discussed both by the Parliament and the Council as those instruments that can help regulations support innovation. But right now there is a talk in the Commission about the creation of at least 3 different sandboxes, if I'm not mistaken. One would be introduced by the pilot regime. The other one, the Commission mentioned introducing sandboxes in blockchain. The AI regulation introduces the idea of an AI sandbox, and each of the sandbox would have a little bit different scheme. So this is my question, maybe to Helen, if there is some coordination among EU institutions on the designing of such sandboxes, which together with the experimental clauses are seen by the market as those 2 instruments that can help us. And last point I wanted to make is I was a little bit surprised to see a mention of the carbon footprint, specifically in relation to Bitcoin, which of course it is a real problem, and we don't want to say it's not. But here I would recommend again sticking to the principle, same rules for everyone, because if we just look at crypto assets and specifically Bitcoin from the perspective of its carbon footprint, then probably we are opening the doors to doing the same with every single technology. I don't know if this is the way we should do it, and I'm really not sure that a regulation of markets in crypto assets should be the legal document which tackles the carbon footprint of technologies. So these are my questions and a very short background from the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for your input. And as Mrs. Cutman is going to leave us soon, I would like Helen to answer this question, if possible, pretty quickly. I had asked for immediate questions to be raised, so if anybody is to blame, it's me. So Helen, would you be willing to answer Maria's question?
Yeah, sure. And thank you very much for the question, Maria. It's a good occasion for me to mention actually the work on sandboxes, and as we've seen the good progress now on the pilot that already paves the way for which is the pilot is not a sandbox, it's a regulation with extension for trading, secondhand trading based on DLT, which is quite advanced. I don't think there's many other examples of this around the world. So here we are a leader, I think, in legislation. But as you said, also we are preparing other sandboxes, and one in particular that we are putting in place now under the European blockchain services infrastructure is for a pan-European sandbox. So we're looking into applications that would be primarily cross-border, at least 3 countries being implicated, where startups and also a larger industry can come and test their application in a safe environment together with regulators, and then have a dialogue around those applications the impact on the current legislative framework, and therefore be able to perhaps adjust or make sure that their applications are in compliance with the existing framework. And I think this is so important when you think about this space, which is moving so fast. And now we look at MiCA coming out, but we want to make sure that the legislation is not already obsolete when it comes into action. So that's why I think we're flanking with these regulatory sandboxes to be able to monitor the development going forward. So indeed, we do it both for blockchain. So under EPSI on blockchain related applications, and then under AI, there will be a similar sandbox. So we will have cooperation and exchange of information between the sandboxes. So we also draw experiences, but most important, I think it is important to give feedback to the companies that participate, that they know they get some useful information for their deployments, and also perhaps building experience on pan-European level on the sandboxes that all countries can benefit from.
Thank you, Helen. Any comment on the carbon footprint question? Helen, did you hear me?
Okay, sorry, yes. I think this is something we're following very closely as well. As I said, we've been looking into the energy efficiency of blockchain, and obviously with the current transition from proof of work to proof of stake, hopefully some of this, the impact will be alleviated if that is realized. That will definitely have an impact on the Ethereum blockchain and all its other similar protocols, but Bitcoin remains, of course, an issue in its current footprint. And I don't want to comment here on if the MiCA is the place or not. I think it has to be looked into for sure. And we have seen voices around the Europe countries are actually raising voices that we should look into legislation. But it would require quite thorough analysis first, and is there a possibility to do it or not?
Okay, that's okay, Helen. And I may add that Ms. Scottman asked prior to this event that her comments be more of a general nature, rather than focusing on the MiCA directive. Anyway, I'd like to follow up and continue with our next participant, our next speaker. Mr. Bowles is Novi's Global Director, and I would like to invite you to enlighten us. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Stefan, and thank you to SME Connect for creating this forum. And just one or two words. I mean, SMEs are very much at the heart of our business, rather than the big blue chips that one often thinks about. So we really appreciate the work that SME Connect is doing to highlight the importance for SMEs in the European economy and elsewhere. And thank you to our co-hosts, the rapporteur and the shadow rapporteur, for joining us today and for facilitating this discussion. For those of you that don't know, Novi is in effect the fintech arm of the company that is now called Meta, and we are, amongst other things, responsible for the digital wallet that was launched on the 19th of October, is a pilot in the US and in Guatemala, using the pre-existing stablecoin USDP issued by Paxos. And that's a stablecoin that's been in circulation for some 3 years, has an incredibly sort of solid cash reserve, and the constituency and the composition of reserves is an incredibly important element in, I think, MiCA, and in particular in the segment that deals with EMTs. And that's one of the reasons why we chose USDP, because of the composition of the reserve. So it is basically 100% cash or near cash. So you have parity of value between the dollar and the USDP stablecoin for the purposes of the pilot. We were involved in the initial consultations around MiCA. It is perhaps a little surprising to us when we looked at the council discussions on MiCA that a very significant proportion, something in the order of 70% of the council meetings were focused on the ART element, which is in effect what version 1 of what was called then the Libra white paper focused on. And just so we're all clear, to my knowledge, and I'd be very interested to hear other views, there is no single organization in the world proposing anything like what is described in the ART element of MiCA these days. So I very much hope, Mr. Rapporteur, that your time can be saved in focusing on other more material and relevant elements as you think about MiCA going forwards, and particularly around the EMT side of things and the third pillar in terms of the catch-all future framework to shape the rate at which things are evolving in this space. I think there are a number of other important moving parts going on that are relevant to what you're deliberating on at the moment, Mr. Berger and Mr. Kovacs. The current consultation by CPMI and IOSCO on the application of the principles of financial market infrastructures to future stablecoin arrangements, which is about to close, is an incredibly important contribution to this space. But I would start really, I think, by commending the Commission and the European institutions for the initiative that is MiCA. I mean, it is genuinely the first pan-regional, pan-country attempt at framing what a regulatory framework should look like. And it's really important that I think this thing makes progress and becomes, a piece of law that will hopefully encourage innovation and investment in Europe in this space. Because as a number of speakers have identified, the rate at which technologies are evolving and the way in which consumers are driving them, and in particular consumers that form the backbone of the economy and SMEs, is happening at a phenomenal rate of knots. And we are providing sort of platforms to facilitate this, but ultimately it's consumer behaviors and business behaviors which are accelerated by COVID that have driven this sort of activity. And so we will, I think, only continue to see incredible innovation in this space moving forwards. And it is something that, to your point, Mr. Shadow Rapporteur, I think the idea is regulation should be, as it were, relatively agnostic as to the form of innovation. The point is, does it fit within the regulatory framework, and is it appropriately supervised and regulated? And if not, how is it going to be addressed so that you're not dealing with some arbitrage opportunity that's going on here? Mr. Berger, you rightly raised the question of liability for CASPs, and I think that's an incredibly important point. And certainly Novi, which only hosts a wallet, so we are a CASP. We are not the creator of any stablecoin, let alone a cryptocurrency, but we absolutely stand to redeem at par, one for one, any stablecoin that is hosted in a customer's wallet for the original value that they put into that wallet. So there will be no loss of value. Now, there's a very different question, and I think this is the bit where the ART part of the debate in MiCA is important, is how do you ensure that investors in asset reference tokens, to the extent that there are any out there that are captured by this legislation, are properly treated for consumer protection purposes? And I think that's really, in some ways, I suspect, where your remarks are going to and addressed. On the point of energy consumption, is an incredibly important point. Now, energy consumption per se does not necessarily mean people are not using renewable energy sources. My company is one that was already achieved carbon neutral status in April. We have data centers around Europe. Those data centers are powered by wind farms in and around Europe. So we have 100% renewable supplies for our data centers. And I think the more we can encourage companies to invest in renewable sources of energy as we move forwards, both within our environment and also in our supply chains, that is, I think, the critical area of focus. And I recognize that Ethereum is trying to make an important developmental move away from proof of work to proof of stake. And I think that's extraordinarily important and should happen as soon as possible. And everything I see indicates that they are moving rapidly in that direction. But at this stage, I think whether or not legislation should attempt to try and deal with energy consumption as opposed to the source of energy that is being used, and is it renewable or not, would seem to me to be appropriate distinction to make at this stage. I'm very conscious I don't want to take up other speakers' times, and I'm very much more interested in some ways in dealing with questions and having a bit of a debate about this. So I think, Stefan, I'll wrap up there for now, but I'm very happy to field any questions as they come up.
Thank you very much, Edward, and I'm grateful for the speakers alluding to the comments that have been made prior to their statement, so that we have immediately an ongoing discussion and debate. I'd like to continue with our next speaker, though. Mr. Hackel, Kevin Hackel, is in the digital banking financial services of Bitkom. Mr. Hackel, you're here, Kevin?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks for the invitation, and hi to all. It's really a pleasure to be on this virtual stage among such profound experts on that matter. Well, I think a lot of interesting things have been said, so I won't try to repeat them all, but maybe focus on something that is really crucial here before going into some detail. As said, crypto assets are becoming growingly important. There's no doubt about that. So getting a European regulation at place is super important. It's the basis for building trust. It's the basis for building, the fundamentals for how this technology and the services linked to that technology will evolve over the next year. So this is without doubt. But another aspect in the proposal is important, and that states, or one goal of European policymakers is to actually keep the European Union innovation friendly. And I think this is very important especially as we are dealing with a crypto ecosystem that is just at the beginning of something greater. I mean, we just said it's gradually moving from niche to mainstream. I mean, look at Bitpanda, for instance, an Austrian unicorn. 2 years ago, probably lots of people, if you asked them on the street, would have said, who are they? I don't know. Today, the picture is quite different. So I think it's important that whatever reasons, and I think, Mr. Berger, it was you, that the proposal has become somewhat political. Let's put it that way. But let me just give one example where we, for instance, as Bitkom, are a bit concerned whether the proposal as it stands at this stage is moving toward the right directions. And I want to pick on something that Edward just introduced a bit, which is stablecoins. As it seems, be it EMT, be it ART, there seem to be high burdens to actually issue an euro-based stablecoin. And if you put this in greater context, actually what this does is it makes Europe as such more dependent from the US, if you want. So because it's a US stablecoin and not a euro stablecoin. But if you compare it to other regulatory processes or developments on a political level we have in place, actually we want to achieve the opposite. Look at the European Payments Initiative, look at CBDC, which still, of course, takes some time. But I think in the meantime, it's important also to find a way that stable coins can play a role within Europe, because they are basically the basic technology we need for DeFi applications and stuff like that. So if we end up at a situation where at least central exchanges or regulated entities cannot make use of stable coins, or where the text as we have it is very unclear in how far stable coins can or will be used or will be issued, I think this is just one example, and I don't want to add too much to the discussion at this stage, where we say, okay, I may understand the political direction this is coming from, but let's also focus on the innovation part, because after all, if the innovation is happening outside Europe, we are having a discussion actually about something we won't see happening, to put it a bit provocative. Yeah, maybe just as a food for thought, that's something I wanted to add to the discussion. And yeah, thanks for being here, and now I will, you know, provide the stage for someone else who hasn't had the chance so far.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for your comments. And last but not least, Karl Jensfeld is the Director of Public Policy Nordics and Baltics from MasterCard. Karl, you're here?
I am. Thank you so much for inviting me and looking forward to discuss this interesting topic with you. It's interesting coming from MasterCard, who is a stakeholder that has been operating in the digital finance universe for quite some time, decades even, to see the enormous changes that has happened in the last few years. This is becoming very apparent in our line of business. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's not an envious task of policymakers to keep up with this rapid changing environment. But I think they are doing a very good job. So I want to compliment them on this specific topic. From our perspective at MasterCard, when it comes to payments, it also comes down to choice. Consumers want to choose how they pay, and they want to choose with what they pay. And this has become apparent in the last few years. So MasterCard, we're a global technology company, and our core business is to enable this choice, but also do that and letting consumers have a peace of mind. We need to make payments safe, and we need to make payments accessible and easy to use for everyone. And we do this by networking with other stakeholders within the payments universe. So a common misconception, I'm not sure if anyone in the audience have this, but we at MasterCard, we don't issue cards. We don't provide credits, we don't collect payments, we don't determine interest rates, etc. This is what banks do, or our customers and partners do. We help them build infrastructure to facilitate transactions. So we have a network role within this universe, and this network's role is what makes us believe that MiCA is an enormously important file, an enormously important proposal. We operated and have always operated in a very regulated environment, and we see it as a natural development step that this should also be true for the crypto asset space. And the file and the effort to do so is important and will be successful if it follows a few principles that I just want to send across that's important from our perspective. And this is the principle of same business, same risk, same rules. Further to that, if this makes the framework for dealing with crypto assets providing strong customer protection that has been apparent in the traditional digital payments universe, that's important as well. It should also deliver a level playing field for all stakeholders. And it needs to operate in full compliance with all existing and applicable laws and regulation. This includes AML, this includes know your customers, etc., etc. As long as MiCA adhere to these principles, it does have the potential to set a standard even globally, as we know many regions are looking into Europe for similar files and similar initiatives. And I would say that the MiCA, the proposal so far succeeds quite well in these efforts. I want to make one remark, also following something raised by Mr. Bowles, that looking at the proposal, the EMTs versus ARTs distinction, it does perhaps raises some concerns on specifically the consumer protection issue, where one of them in the Commission's proposal fall under the definition of funds in PSD2 that has all the consumer protection then of PSD2, while this is not the case for ARTs. Now, ARTs might be used for payments, even though they might not be designed for this. We, in a rapidly evolving environment, things change. So having different set of consumer protection adhere to different categorizations of crypto assets is perhaps a concern from our perspective. Now, I know this has been discussed by many. I know there are even discussions or ideas to have maybe not MiCA as the correct vehicle for this issue. It could be a review of PSD2. And I know also that Council in their proposal has addressed this, and perhaps also so will the Parliament. So looking forward to hear a future debate, if not in this forum, then in the trialogues on this issue. And by that, I will finish and let others have the floor.
Well, thank you so much, Carl, for your contribution. Helen, I'm not sure whether you're going to leave us at this point, so I'm going to say bye. And thank you for having been here. Thank you for having been so kind as to answer our questions and lead us and introduce us into the subject.
Yeah,
so have a good night and
thanks everyone.
good
Very
evening,
interesting
and
to
see you
hear
next time.
all the intro. Thanks.
Bye bye, Helen. So I would like to, there's already a question here, but I would like the two rapporteurs to comment on what they've heard and maybe react to some of the comments that have been raised. Stefan, would you like to start?
Yes, okay. Thank you, Stefan. I'm glad that we all agree that with this file, MiCA, the EU can be a worldwide frontrunner. And this is a very important file. And let me answer to some concerns or points raised in this debate. The first thing I want to answer to Maria Staskovic and Kevin Hackel. Let me say in general, what I want is to keep the EU innovation friendly. And this was the reason why I mentioned the decentralized finance and the DAO. DAO, it's a new thing mentioned in the paper. Yeah. And this is the reason why, just to open the door for the decentralized finance. It is a new development, but we have to see in which direction it will be developing, because you can compare decentralized finance to the bad sides of Wall Street. Yeah, decentralized finance is not only a positive thing. We have to look and to see in which direction it will develop. And on the other hand, I see the development and I want to keep it open. And I want to make some new steps just to let it grow. And this is why I mentioned it. And now the next questions coming up. What's about the stable coins? We have only American stable coins, and Mr. Bowles, we have maybe coming DM. Yeah, this is a big debate behind it, and there's a very big debate behind it. But not only DM, maybe an Amazon coin or an Aldi coin or coins from very big companies over the world, which have customers in billions and trillions or something. Yeah. This is of course rising concerns in the political world, and it rising concerns in the ECB, because it's of course a different thing if you have in the end of the money a public institution or a private company. So this is one of the most important thing, and then it's all about the process of permissions, the permit process. And this is about the RIT debate and the EMT debate. It's all about of the process to permit. And I know that you would have been easier. But the idea, because I made the steps with the ECB and we implemented it, is the idea that we want to have a financial system with the ECB in the end. And this is my political idea. And I think the parliament will share this view. The next thing is all about the environmental things. Okay, I know the proof of work in the Bitcoin concept is a driver of using energy. And we don't want to waste energy. And everybody knows we need in the next 10 or 20 years 2, 3, or 5 more times energy as we use it now. And so for me, I see this problem. But on the other hand, we have in the EU, in the European Union, the Green Deal. And we have the European trading system. And everybody who is mining coins has to buy the energy under this regime. And I cannot speak for the whole world. And so for me, I cannot ban the proof of work, because it is essential for the Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin is an essential driver for the whole new world. And so we cannot stop on this thing, the proof of work concept. I know the problems, I know what's behind it, but I think MiCA, and there I have a different view, like she's away, like Helen Kopman. I have a different view. MiCA should not be the place to stop proof of work. Not be the place to stop proof of work. This is my opinion. And these are one of the main 3 points. I know that we have further discussion about these topics, because these are the most important topic. For me, I'm a Christian Democrat, and I believe in institutions. And this is the thing, and this is the thing why we shaped it in this way we did. And let me say the last thing, all about, and I try to use the principle, same risks, same rules, because for me it's not obvious that some new small companies have their own rules and the old big banks have their own rules. For me, it does not make sense. So I just try to keep the difference as small as I can. And so this is maybe this is my first answer. I know that we can talk about till tomorrow about the things, but these are maybe my first views.
Thank you, Stefan. I can see Edward raised his hand already. I'd like to continue, however, with Andre for his comments after the first round of interventions.
Thank you, and I will not be too long. I think to a large extent, I would fully subscribe to what Stefan Berger has just said in his remarks. I think, in my view, one of the key principles we should be able to stick to when we discuss MiCA is the proportionality issue. So really the same activities, same risks, same rules. And I think we already saw it in the initial proposal from the Commission. We can work a bit more on that. But I think this is critical, because if one of the goals is to set the regulatory framework, which on one hand will set some key principles in terms of consumers protection, investors protection, some predictability, and some basic rules that has to be followed by everybody. Also in terms of giving some certainty for businesses to invest in the area, but also, I mean, then compliance with other set of regulations such as AML and others. So I think this is you know, this should be our ambition, but at the same time, the regulation, and I think there is a way how to do it. The regulation is should be sort of open and promoting some more innovation in this regard, and this is the way that I see it, and that's why I mentioned also these principles of technological neutrality and other issues. I think this should be sort of basic, I mean, you know, cornerstone of our discussion. And in this regard, I also would so proportionality, first point. The second point, and I would like definitely support the rapporteur's view here. That's the entire sustainability debate. It is a point that we should not avoid, especially in terms of, you know, having a political consistency within the regulatory framework that we have currently in the European Union, and I can think, you know, of the entire sustainability finance network framework and all the other ambitions that we have. But I think we should for the right purposes, we should choose the right means. And in this regard, I see really MiCA as a regulatory framework that puts forward a new type of legislation in how crypto assets should be governed in terms of their nature of as financial services products or financial services in general. And I think that should be our focus, main focus, the key scope. I'm not saying that we should avoid completely the debate. I see many ways how to actually include the sustainability concerns into the framework, but definitely MiCA is not the right place to address the entire sustainability issue linked to the way the technology running and the crypto assets themselves are actually dealing with the energy consumption efficiency and et cetera. I think we should really, you know, look into proper means for that. And as we speak, we're discussing in Europe a lot of legislation linked to the climate policy, sustainability, energy consumption, renewable energy, et cetera. So I think these may be more relevant places to address such issues. But I think in MiCA we should really focus on its core nature over there.
Oh, thank you very much, Andre. Edward's waiting. Please go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Berger's points, which I broadly welcome. I mean, I think you know, there's a lot of shared interest in these points, and also that of the shadow rapporteurs. And I wanted to try and reassure him as much as I possibly can. Firstly, that DM isn't waiting around the corner as far as Meta and Novi are concerned. We are experimenting with a small-scale pilot in the US and Guatemala in our digital wallet, and that involves a dollar-denominated stablecoin. We will not introduce into Europe any stablecoin before the MiCA framework is in force. Full stop. End of story. And it's not our job to issue stablecoins or indeed any cryptocurrencies. That's not what we're about either. So we look forward to MiCA coming into force. I think the concern you have is the quite long implementation timeframe envisaged in MiCA at the moment, as well as the quite long implementation timeframe for any digital euro. And the question is, what happens between now and then? Because that's a lot of time for European citizens who will want to be involved in these markets in one way or another. And so I do think it probably bears a degree of further scrutiny to look at the timeframes for implementation, both of the digital euro project as well as MiCA. But just on one particular point, Mr. Berger, you talked about public money, private money. As you're aware, I'm sure, only about 5% of money in circulation at the moment is actually public money, i.e. central bank money. 95% of money in circulation is commercial bank money, i.e. private money. And the question is, what's that backed by? And how is that different from any future stablecoin? And this gets into the EMT provisions in MiCA, because they link back to the e-money directive. And that gets into the reserve composition. And the important question there is the reserve basically made up of cash, which is basically public money, right? This is central bank money. And as long as you've got a stable coin that is backed by a high quality, well-regulated, well-supervised reserve, which is either 100% cash or near cash, i.e. Euro treasuries issued by member states, for example, then I think what you've got is a really reliable store of value and a reliable, predictable means of payment, because it is backed by public money. There is no binary distinction there between the two. The two work together hand in hand. And I would just urge people to reflect more on that, on the EMT provisions in particular, because that's an important anchor for the reliability of the payment vehicle that could be a stablecoin.
Thank you, Edward, for making this point. I got Kevin Huckle who raised his hand. I still got two questions, at least two questions from our from the audience that I would like to forward. But Kevin, go ahead.
Just adding to what's been just said, maybe just also from a European perspective, I think it's also important to mention that because of the negative interest, it's not so easy to build a use case around EMT-based stable coins, let's put it that way, compared to other currencies. Just to add to this, but also very grateful to what Mr. Berger said in relation to MiCA DAO, and so we are very interested in how this is proceeding, but of course, floor to other questions.
Thanks, Kevin. Carolano, from CEPS, if I'm not mistaken, at least he was with CEPS at the time when I was here at Brussels. He asks, he's not so sure he can be positive about MiCA. He doesn't understand why there should be a separate regime for these operators working with crypto assets than in comparison to what already exists in finance regulation, like MiFID. He asks why is there less protection in this regard when they deal with our money nonetheless? Anybody wants to comment on that?
I'm happy to offer a view, Stefan.
Okay.
Actually, I think MiCA builds upon the e-money directive, particularly in the EMT pillar. And I think that's an incredibly important evolution, because it is literally an evolution. It's an evolution of electronic money. And that is basically what we're dealing with as far as payments in EMT are concerned. And therefore, it's completely consistent. And the protections in EMD are brought forward through the EMT provisions in MiCA.
Also, if I may add, I wouldn't say that it's creating a double regime for in a place where financial instruments are already regulated by other legal regulations. Regulations like MiFID. On the contrary, thanks to a new definition of security that is contained, I think, in the pilot regime, which clearly states that security can also be issued on DLT. Now we have clarity in the fact that everything that looks like a security, behaves like security, smells like a security, but is just issued on DLT, is a security that will be regulated by MiFID. And maybe not in all the regimes, but in many countries, financial products that were that looked like a security but were tokens or were issued on DLT were not recognized as such by the regulator or the authority, so they couldn't be regulated, and they wouldn't be supervised by national authorities. So I think that's really important that we have it now with MiCA and the pilot regime.
Stefan?
Just one sentence. What we try to do is building a new MiFID for a new chapter. Yeah. So this is the idea behind. And I am very thankful to Edward Bolz that I can hear that Meta will not launch stablecoin until MiCA is finished. I think that's okay, and I think that's what you needed because you need to know the rules. But I'm very thankful to hear it. And you are right. It's all about the discussion about the CBDC because, and that I have to mention clearly, the ECB was sleeping for years because the ECB was sleeping for years because other countries have already developed CBDCs, and we could be on another stage. So for me, the whole solution of what we are discussing is the CBDC. And I know that it's the exactly point what you pointed out, the exactly thing what you pointed out. It's the time between the situation now and the release of a CBDC. And what do we in these years in between? And some companies have a gold rush idea behind it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so but this, I know the situation you described it very correct. And for me, the main problem is the ECB, but I cannot solve it. I'm only just a small politician, and I only can. I told them you have to be faster. But they told me how we need to test it, and we need years and years and years to make it safe and secure and whatever. So okay, I did what I can.
So we're getting slowly to the end of this session. Are there any comments from any side or any questions that somebody would like to raise at this point? Because I know that at least our MEPs and maybe others will have to leave us. Soon. So if that's not the case, there's already a 5-minute delay. That's not the case. I would like to thank everybody for coming in and joining our discussion today. I think it was a lively debate. I think it was a timely debate, and we will, as observers, closely follow what the European legislator is up to, and see to which extent, of course, since we represent SMEs, to which extent this will favor SME activity or not. And be to the detriment or to the advantage of the consumer. I think everybody has a clear view of this and has a clear conviction that this is what we have in mind. At least everybody that was present today. So thank you so much for our panelists for being here. Thank you so much our co-hosts Stefan Berger and Andrzej Kopazik as rapporteurs, and maybe I would like to ask Horst Heitz to take the floor and tell us when we will meet again, targeting which subject.
I want to say thank you. That was great that we had the rapporteur and shadow rapporteur in this webinar. Absolutely exceptional. And I think I want only to say next year we're starting again with the working group on finance with Stefan Gerold as our advisor and with the host Kovarek and Berger. Thank you very much that you're supporting our work for our SMEs so strong. I have to say this is important to have this direct connection to the parliament.